I need information. All due respect, Mr. Black has been here for a while now. I've been asking you for that. And I need information in reference to the start time. Where do we go from here? Because we have the buses, we have the drivers. I mean, because at some point, we have to start having this conversation so that we can start getting this turnaround. And because we have constituents that we owe interest to.
I agree.
So, I mean.
At this point, there needs to be an hour separation between elementary, middle, and high. However you want to do it. One can be, you can move those back and forth however you wish, but it would have to have 1 hour separation.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Yeah, to Robert's point though, I think we need to start from a foundation, because like right now, we're trying to get the data together, students, the car riders, who's not riding. We're trying to account for students, and we've never had this information. And right now, I've been primarily working with your area, because that's the area that I've been tasked to start with. I think Meek Point has a pretty good handle on their students, but we gotta do Bluffton and Hilton Head, so that we can have good information, so when we go and say something, we wanna make sure that it's right. And then with a bell schedule, I think, to me personally, my experience, you know, we need to put maybe another school, like, to get through this now, what we're dealing with, you know, because we've got things that we're finding, to your 5 questions, that we need to, things that we need to put in place in order to make this successful. So, I mean, I know there's been conversation about the bell schedule, but I would like to, because there's a lot of tools in there that we can use, and we can set up scenarios, and then come back to the board and say, look, this is what we would come up with. If we do 8:15, this is what we do. If we come up with 8 o'clock, we can come down and give different scenarios so that we can make good decisions, because, I mean, we're impacting the community. John?
I support what Will was talking about in terms of volume of email. Start times is certainly number 2 or 3 in terms of the ones that I get the most. What I'd ask you to do is give us some historical perspective. What did we do before we changed the start times for transportation? Obviously, we're not beginning to transport kids. We always did that, okay? So what caused the start times to happen, and what was how much did transportation play in that decision just to change the start times?
Well, it was before I was in the position, so I'm kind of at a far talking about it, but as you know, it started on Hilton Head. That was run as a pilot program for 1 year, and I believe it was 2. Yeah, it ran for 2 years before it went, went district-wide, and then it was decided that all high schools would move. And really, transportation, as far as I'm aware, played no role, limited role in that decision. We reacted to the need, and what happened is, especially on the Hilton Head, when Hilton Head was all alone, and the middle school and the elementary schools were together, that required us, I believe, to add 9 additional buses, is what I understand, just to deal with that extra volume just at Hilton Head. And then once the switch came over, they pretty much balance each other out. So as long as you switch all elementary, or even by cluster, if you make switches, that'll balance itself out. It's when you take like one school and pull it out, our system, it unbalances the system we have. And that's actually what happened when they pulled Hilton Head High School out on its own. It kind of unbalanced everything. And we did have to purchase 9 additional buses in order to make that happen and accommodate that. Was transportation really part of that? No, we were told to do it, and
Okay.
they did it.
All right, so am I correct when I say that prior to the pilot program, you had a 1-tier,
No, we still had 2 tiers.
2 tiers?
Yeah, the difference was you had high school in the morning, elementary second, or high school first, elementary second. So the swap, when Hilton Head piloted it, they moved with the elementary schools. So now you had all elementary schools plus Hilton Head High School second, and all middle schools and high school. And then when we made the switch, it was just a full-on switch. You just rotated them, where elementary went first, high school, middle school went second. That we can accommodate, and you can even, to some extent, do it by clusters if you wanted to. If you wanted to say, Whale Branch cluster wants high school first and elementary school second. Now, am I speaking out of line? I think that's,
We could possibly.
there is some crossover.
Yeah, there's some opportunities, like
May
we
not
can do
be-
it by cluster, but if we headed where, like, we got a bus down here by, say, Mink Point, and it's the high school or something, then we can use that to come back the other way. You know, there's other things that we would look at, but we could do it by cluster. But when you go in, you wanna take a big picture of everything, so if we got a bus over here, that might can help the Mink Point area, and then go down here, and then we have something coming back that's an elementary, and then we can cut down that deadhead time.
So, last question, last thought. Now that I kind of understand that. The last time we talked about it, I believe you said that we were 15. To start everybody at the same time, and have a one-tiered system, would cost us about $15 million. Is that correct?
I don't remember the exact number, it'll be a substantial, we pretty much double the number of buses, yeah. So, yeah, we come close to doubling our buses, we use right now 140, so if you say we're using about 140 at $100,000 a pop, yeah, you're looking at about about $15 million. So.
And the staff.
So,
And then staffing, and we're struggling with the staff at the level we are right now.
so it's a question of whether we want to expend the money or not.
Correct.
There's no technical problem standing in the way.
Now, so recognize the state supplies the majority of our buses right now, and they will not supply for a single tier, so we will be completely on our own at that point, so,
Just
for the additional buses.
Just to get back to what you said at the beginning, that this was a pilot program. I believe before the district started, that this program was supposed to be piloted. Dr. Marsh piloted this program over at Hilton Head or on that side of the Broad first. I remember that was a pilot, and it was supposed to be a 3-year pilot. I believe within the second year of it being piloted, if I'm correct, I believe he just went ahead and made it district wide.
Yeah, that sounds,
Right.
sounds right.
Right. And so I also say that to say this. The program was piloted, and that's how we kind of got into it. And the same amount of buses I'm sure that we probably had then, we probably have about some of those plus a little more now. I think that what y'all are asking for, or what y'all are trying to build upon, is more time sensitive than what y'all are trying to give us. We want to basically start school as in within the coming years. It sounds like you're saying that we can have this information to you next year at the same time. To me, that's unacceptable.
No, I would say.
Let me finish, and I give you time to speak respectfully. To me, that's unacceptable. It's a time frame, and this year for me coming as a new board member, I'm finding it very hard that everything is being pushed back. Is nothing. Oh, we need more time. That's not. I'm just a kid up front. For me, that does not work. I believe in having time sensitive, and I believe in having comprehensive plans moving forward. And when I come into a meeting, I expect for things to be what I'm told that I'm going to get. I expect that to be given. Now, with that said, my thing about it is, I understand with some of the information y'all getting, that's years of information, that's years of data. That's just not 1 year comprehensive. My thing is now, I want to get us to a place where we can get this conversation started upon, listen, do we have the amount of buses? I'm sure we do. I don't see a difference in us having to say, look here, on this side of the broad, if it's better for northern side to start and change their school times to one time across, I just don't see where there's a dilemma in that. And go ahead.
Couple things. Well, first is nowhere have we had one school to start time. It's never been one school start time. Northern Beaufort County, Southern Beaufort County, it has not occurred. So
Before we first addressed it, before we piloted it,
before we piloted it, high schools and middle schools were first. Elementary schools were second.
Okay, look, that's what I mean right there. When I said one school start time, all the high schools started at one time,
Right.
all middle schools started at one time.
No,
That's what I mean.
that is that. Okay,
Right.
that we have.
Right,
And we
okay.
have that today,
Well,
except for Hilton Head.
right, but also principals have the right to alter that, and that is something that
Actually,
the board needs to look at too as well.
I know Dr. Moss did, or in the past they were allowed, and we did check recently. As of right now, they're all the same, except for Hilton Head, And Hilton Head is done that way due to traffic control.
Right.
It is all about the volume of traffic, and the traffic to those two lights cannot handle the volume from the middle school and the high school at the same time. So that is the only reason there's a 15-minute delay, because it's been found that if the high school goes first, in 15 minutes, the bulk of them can be out of the way of the middle school, which goes second. That's the only separation that I'm aware of. All others throughout the district, elementary is at one time, middle and high schools are at another.
Right.
If I'm incorrect on that, please tell me which location. But in my last, because we checked when we did reference this, and they're all the same.
Right, but see, that was there, that night when we allowed them to change that. When the principal came forth, what we, as a board, what we should have asked her is in changing this, but actually, from my understanding, what the board was told, that she didn't really have to come to the board to get permission. The question should have been,
Are you talking about the original
I'm
pilot?
talking about when the principal came recently to the board and said, based off the information that you just expressed.
It was a safety issue. That was a recommendation from administration for safety.
Right, okay, right, and that sounds good, but my question about it is, where did they get their recommendation from? Did they get it from law enforcement? Did they get it from emergency management risk? Where? Because see, we have to stop.
So that was a study from myself, David Grissom. We also got the Town of Hilton Fire involved. We did go through the sheriff's office. So yes, everybody on a first responder type, well, fire, sheriff, and our safety coordinator were all involved in that decision.
And there was a written document on that everybody, because see,
David Grissom did send out a written memo as far as a recommendation, so yes.
Okay, well, I mean, I want to go back. I want to go ahead and kind of get in this. Basically, this is my point from dealing with. Well, this is my stance from dealing with this on from here on out. When we deal with stuff like this right here, we need written documentation, because what I find out that people say, no, this didn't happen. All of, so we need written document. When you bring written documentation and say that this is what so and so find based upon this, and this is what they are saying that needs to be done, then I have no problem now legitimizing it and saying, okay, well, now we need to look before, because this is a concrete and this is a team effort, and saying that this is something that needs to be looked into. And I don't feel that was done based upon that day when it was changed. So that's why.
It was done.
Okay, well.
All right, we need to get back to start times. Our processes, I don't disagree with you, processes need improvement.
Right.
We need to get back to start time and what our options are.
The one thing you also mentioned was about a comprehensive plan. That is where we completely agree with you. If we're going to look at changing start times, there's two things that, in my mind, impact this. And one is the need for a comprehensive plan. And that's exactly what we're working on.
Well, we can't take 2 years to do it.
We can't, but we need 6 months. It's not something that can be done. Are you a transportation director? Do you have expertise in transportation?
I have great. I'm not
But
sure.
here-
But hold on. You asked me a question.
We're drifting, we got to
So
I got good common sense.
stay focused.
okay, so that is what we're wanting to build, is that foundation to do a comprehensive plan. That is exactly what we're working on. The other thing is kind of the natural school cycle. There is in a school calendar it goes with the flow of a cycle. And quite frankly, right now is way out of cycle to talk about start times. Parents have already started signing up for schools. It is the wrong time of year to do this. Really, this conversation should occur in the fall. It should start August, October for the following year. That would be the cycle to talk about it. Now, saying that we're not ready is not, and we don't have a comprehensive plan is not because of that cycle. But what I can tell you is we need that time now to August, October to build that foundation, to come to you with a comprehensive plan. Mr. Blacks is a great asset to us. He gives us the capability to do analytics that we have not been able to do before. But in order to do those analytics, you have to build the foundation of the programming that will allow you to do that work. And that is what we're actively working on right now. And until that's in place, we would be rushing and guessing, and you would not have a comprehensive plan.
All right, so that's pretty much the bottom line on that conversation. Let me see. I got it. The school bus schedules, the turnaround time is really the point, right, what we need to
I was
turn
gonna say, yeah, an hour,
That
we can
can't
do,
change.
if you just swap, that can
Right,
be done.
That can't change.
Yeah, that can be done.
We have no options on that, although by cluster, things could change. So there are options for us
Just swap.
by cluster, but it would always be a swap.
Yes.
Okay. And you want to do a comprehensive plan, but it's going to take you 6 months.
Yes.
And we can hold you to that. And one other point that I wanted to make, when Principal Onan came before us, I'm pretty sure that the board said, you don't even have to come here, because all principals have the
Yeah.
opportunity
That's correct.
to adjust it by up to 15 minutes. And then what I'm hearing you say tonight is that's really not true. You
It
have
had
to-
been in the past. There was some different,
But
but
is
when
it-
I checked recently, all elementaries were the
Right.
same, all middles were the same, all high schools,
Right,
except for.
I'm just saying, do they have the opportunity, the individual principals, to come to y'all and say, we want to change our thing by 15 minutes?
Kind of comment, Robert. My experience, that's what we did, like, I would get with the deputy superintendent, and then we would just sit down and I would give them what I needed to make it really, really work. And then they would come back and say, well, the education, so if I said 4:45, she might have said 4:30. So elders, can you meet me, can you do 4:50? And then I go back, plug it in, and I go, okay, I knew it was a stretch, but we would be pressed, but we would say, okay, I can do it. So we worked together. That's how we did it. We just sat and then I just gave what what would work for me, like outstanding, 100, the perfect world. They give me what they wanted and we just met in the middle.
Right. So can we say the principals have the opportunity to negotiate with the transportation?
I'm not sure.
I don't wanna say something
That's kind of I don't know if, in all honesty, I don't know if that's a policy or if it's superintendent driven. It's so I'd have to look into that.
Okay, good. And that would be something, because that was the impression we left. We
You know, and
left
Dr.
with the
Moss
impression.
did allow that, and he was a principle-driven guy. Dr. Berg is.
That's with an AL.
What's that?
That's principal with an AL as opposed to LE.
Okay. Okay. Yes, yes, exactly. Okay, now, I'm slow, I was up late last night.
I know.
But I'd say, our current superintendent is more a district run. Where our next superintendent falls, I don't know.
Right.
That's kind of been a superintendent driven.
Yeah, I don't want to put out that principals have the opportunity to tweak the start times by 15 minutes if it's not true.
Well, like,
And that's the impression that's out there now based on the last time we had this conversation.
Yeah,
So we either need to quash it or say that it's true.
I will take that assignment to get you that answer.
but let me just say one thing too, like working with St. Helena,
Mhm.
it was, like that 15 minutes would make a difference between getting from one school to the other, because if they get out at the same time, we don't have no time to get over there. So now,
Right.
that's 15 minutes of being late, when if we adjusted 15 minutes, we got time to go to the middle school and then over to the high school and get them. I can only speak to that portion because that's what I've been dealing with. So it looks like we're late every day.
Okay, John.
Can you tell me what the contents of your comprehensive plan would be?
So what Mr. Eldridge just described, what he is used to doing in other school districts, is what we would have the ability to do. We would have the ability to sit down and look at moving start times in schools and see how that impacts efficiency, or able to get, whether we can squeeze those two times closer together, whether stacking some allows us to. So that's what, we kind of need some direction from you at that point. We don't have, but even if you directed us right now, we don't have the foundation to do it.
I hear you. Now, it appears to me that transportation admittedly is a logistical nightmare, but there's more facets to this issue and problem than just transportation. I gather that there was precious little impact study done on the socioeconomical impact in the community by staying in this, based on the complaints and feedback that I get from staff and parents about the start times. So, are we going to who is responsible for wrapping their arms around the whole start time issue and treat transportation as a big chunk of that? However, there are, who's gonna address all the other factors that go into, should we make an investment this way or that way? around
We're
state?
charged with examining start time options. First thing we did, because it drove the last discussion, was transportation. When we lock this down, we'll talk about what else we can do.
Okay,
Right.
All right.
We don't want to overlap into academics, but we can talk about what the next step is. But this was the obvious first step, because this is what drove it last time. That turnaround time was what, did it. So if you said high school started here, you had no options, you had to do this. So that's why that's the first time.
so, do you think it'd be possible to run an impact study in parallel to that comprehensive plan being done?
No, I want to wrap
Rather
this
than
up
serial?
Well, if I could, one thing is that once we have a model built, we can take input from academic committee, from you, whoever wants to put out a scenario, and we can see if it works on the transportation side.
Because it'll tell us.
When it comes to once again, I think that all that sounds good. My thing about it is, I have parents who, one, I already did the start time change. I also have teachers who need to start time change. They're losing money, we're losing jobs. And I hear what you said about it takes 6 months. Unfortunately, I think that we're putting time in another direction versus the actual start time. And y'all probably said where it's coming from. My important thing is that we work on we get some place where we can get a start in. A comprehensive plan. Look at this is what can happen, because when we talk about times overlapping, normally prior to us changing the start times, high school kids were in school at 7:15. Elementary school kids were in school, what, 8:45 or 8 something?
It's called 7:30, 8:30.
Right, okay, 7:30. So those times are not conflicting. And my thing about it is, how hard is it for us to go back to those basic times and getting school students back into school and getting these times changed? Because for one, it's an emergency for me. Let me tell you why. Because you have students who are leaving fourth period to go play sports, who are missing academic seat time. So when we talk about getting a start time as in reference into we have to do this logistics, that logistics, I think we're leaning too much into, do we get too analytical?
If all you want to do is switch them, that can happen anytime. But that is more of a community outreach issue. I mean, whoever ends up on bottom is going to be upset, most likely.
I doubt it very seriously, because
Well, that's where you want to go out to the community, get community feedback, see what the feeling is if you do make that switch. That would be my suggestion, because that's more a political, community-driven, because it impacts the community in a major way.
And we would anticipate that we would get different results than when we went out to the community the last time.
Right.
Which was a year ago.
Well, now you're going to get the high school upset.
I know.
Those that are
I know.
it's a lose-lose. You're not.
I doubt it, because in my area, majority of the people are saying, and the kids are saying, look, Mr. Smith, and they actually come up to me that my job is from 3 or something, and they will not hire me because I don't get out of school until 4 or 5.
No, I think
So hold on. So what I'm getting is the high school kids want to go back. In fact, I spoke to a school full of kids the other day over at Beaufort High School, and that was one of their main questions. They want to start school earlier. So I think different communities have different preference. I think on this side of the broad, the start time is a huge thing because of the fact that they want the high school to go to school first and the elementary school to go second. Also, it's about the dark time, about it being dark outside. So I don't think that on my side of the broad that there will be an issue with that. But that's why I'm saying let's go to the community, and that was my thing. I did tell the board that, and then that's when they came up with let's bring it to this body into this group. But that was my number one thing, to go out and let's hear what the parents had to say. That was my.
If I can add one thing, two things, actually. So you can do that at any time, and it doesn't impact transportation. If you make the switch, if you switch high schools on the transportation side,
Right.
we can accommodate that.
Great.
That's,
Great.
on, what I will agree with you is when we did the, this year, when we did the high school, where the students from each high school come and talk about their school, I forget what we call it.
Town hall.
No, just with the students. It was the
Okay.
principals, the supervisory committee, superintendent's advisory committee. We did ask that question last year at all the high schools, and what we found is it was a mixed bag of responses. And I remember specifically Well Branch wanted it earlier. They said they would, and a lot of the things you talked about, not being able to get to jobs, being far away, and looking at kids, is Well Branch. Hilton Head and Bluffton High, for the most part, liked it later. I think Battery Creek and Beaufort were kind of in the middle. It was a mixed bag of responses. So I do think, yeah, you may go out in the community and find some that are for it. You're also gonna find some that are against it. It's
Right, that goes back to my question. The option we have is to do it by cluster. Is that true?
Yeah, you can do
Okay,
that.
that is an option we have available. So I'm just trying to see how we can move
Actually, I
forward.
can just look at his, if you just give me the times, Mr. Smith, because what I'm getting from what I hear when I go out and put my fillers, right now, we can get by with the other three clusters just being what they are. We could get by today. I would just go and look, because like I've got somebody working on your stuff now, cleaning that up, and we're gonna run studies on yours. So if you give me the times, because we created another database just for your area, and that's what we would look at. So if you give me the times what you're proposing, it'll either tell me it's gonna increase the amount of buses we have, decrease it, or stay the same. That's what it's gonna tell me based on those times you give me.
What cluster is that?
His area, Mr. Smith.
Beaufort High,
Beaufort cluster.
That's right, it's cluster wide. I'm just trying to get
Yeah,
us.
we could, to Robert's point and what he's been saying, hold on, I can narrow it down just on base what you have. We could get by, I mean, I got some input from others, tweaking it, but it's working. But this is the area that seems to have
It's
it.
the Beaufort High cluster. I just want to
Right.
make sure it's not just St. Helen Elementary.
No,
It's that
it's
cluster.
Beaufort cluster.
When he talks about St. Helena, what you gotta realize is that's the bus park out that handles the Beaufort High
I
cluster.
lived there. I did.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
John,
The way we're talking raises a concern with me that transportation is not necessarily the driver of this. I don't think our decision on start time as a district should be based on what's available now in the terms of transportation. Let's assume for a second we do it by cluster. I would prefer to see the best possible compromise to fit the needs of students, staff, and parents around start times, and then come to you and say, how can you make that work? Rather than have you come to us with a plan about what's possible from a transportation point of view, and then have us go off to the community and see if that fits with their needs and expectations. And when I say the community, I'm talking about the staff in the building, in the schools, and the parents. So I would venture that if we made a tentative decision to focus on clusters, then we could do a community impact study in parallel with Mr. Black getting his resources, pictures together.
that's where I'm trying to get us, John.
Huh?
That's where I'm trying to get us, that we can do it by cluster. That's an option we have.
Right,
We've just
right, but
established.
I wanna define the need first and then figure out how to transport the kids to fit that need, rather than trying to fit the need towards the transportation reality. Because we can change the transportation reality with funding, many ways.
Okay, well, we're trying to tighten the budget, and to me, I understand exactly what you're saying, but that's only gonna be more expensive. I mean,
Yes.
if the other way, where they, tell us what the options are per cluster, is gonna keep it within the budget that it already is, I don't think we have a lot of extra money to just,
Yeah.
okay, whatever the
Well-
best plan is, but I don't think that's an option right now.
It's my belief that a vetted budget, which we don't have, a vetted budget does not need belt tightening, it needs liposuction. We gotta go in and get the fat that out of the budget that's embedded there as a result of years and years of perhaps less than state-of-the-art practices in their budgeting process. And then, only then can we say, do we have a shortfall in the, or try to define what the shortfall is. We gotta isolate the inefficiencies in everything we do in the district. We gotta isolate and identify all the materials and programs that are still valuable, and then we can determine whether we are spending the money correctly. Again, it's not where is the money going, but it's why is the money going where it is. So if we want to take the position that says, yeah, we gotta tighten our belts, no more spending, nothing, that accepts the operation as it is. And I don't think that's going forward if we're not trying to improve the efficiency of operation of the district at the same time that we improve the delivery of services to kids.
You done?
Yeah.
I don't think we need to go through this presentation, do you? I mean, you already covered what we need,
For the most part, yeah.
pretty much, what your options are.
Well, I just wanna state,
Let me finish.
okay,
And what we can say is that the transportation-wise, we can do it by cluster, so that each cluster can have its own preference. It doesn't have to be district-wide.
And I add a caveat, as long as you keep an hour separation.
Right, as long, yeah,
As long as you
exactly.
keep the hour separation between a grouping of middle and high and elementary, then clusters can do whatever they want.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
the transportation piece, is you have to have that, as of today, and we're dealing with next year, you've gotta have that 1 hour turnaround. But each cluster can flip it as they see fit, it does not have to be a district-wide thing.
And we
I
hope
think that's progress.
in the future, we may be able to give you more, change that hour a little bit. We just can't do that right now.
I get it, that's where we are today.
Was it- Just to add, like, there's little things that we can do too, like I would task everybody, a goal might be to take one bus off the road, reduce your amount of stops by 10%, try to build a relationship with the daycares where we can have a bulk stop, but you gotta have, so that those little things we can do can actually decrease, you can gain some money. So that's when Robert talks about cleanup, I can print a report and see how many stops we have for the whole district. And then, we start pulling from that, the walk zones, there's things that we could do to tighten up even more. And have a process where if you wanna get an additional stop, you gotta go through a process, whatever. But we've got fat, but it's gonna be some pushback from the community when we start saying, these walk zones, when we start putting the walk zone in, and looking at, obviously, we know some are hazardous that have been identified, but there's some that's been put in place because comfort. So we have to look at those things and get that out to the community as well.
Right.
So when you ask for a report as a board, there's so many different things that we could provide to say, hey, to help our decision making, and people can see it. You can look at ride times. But the data has to be right. We have to know who's riding, who's not riding. To travel the streets, we still got to go in and get these streets where, this is not like the city per se. You got a dirt road over here. And then my few times of being on the bus, and I'm like, well, I know this is not on the map. So now we got to redraw the map to let the driver know that there's a little street right here that you can, or block off these streets so when the computer runs the report, it runs it right. So those are the little nuances of the job that, for me, and that was one of the things that when I answered one of Mr. Smith's questions, is the pace. The pace is so fast that, you can't even keep up. And then to go out and get a consultant, we're going to spend a lot of money. And, but the pace is very fast.
well, this is my last thing about this is that it's very important that we get this done. I think that ever since before I even running vlogs, I remember people stating their opinions on this, and I think that this is something that we should have put out in the town hall. I do think I hear what Mr. Otten is saying today, that we do have that hour flexibility, but I think that this could be done in a more timely fashion. I think that we're stalling the project because we have other things going on moving forward. That's kind of my take on it. I just think that we're kind of just dragging the process along, and that's just my take on it, and I'm done with it. I'm done with it pretty much.
Quick comment, quick question. The comment is, the clusters, I believe, is absolutely the way to go, because that was one of Dr. McGivens' chief recommendations, that we try to view the district in terms of clusters. The hour that you want in between, is that based solely, is that defined by the equipment that we have today?
The number, yeah, most routes.
So if you had, it's possible to change that hour based on a difference in the equipment that we have.
Or improved efficiency, either one.
Yeah, okay.
Or more drivers?
Well, that's more equipment, yeah.
Goes with the equipment, yeah, okay. Can this committee then make a motion to the full board that we examine by cluster what that cluster community wants as a start time, with the understanding that there has to be a 1 hour separation? I'm trying to get us something productive out of this discussion.
Are you saying this committee's gonna do that, or who?
No,
or
no,
who?
take it to the board and make a suggestion that we start these community groups by cluster and get the feedback, because that is an option available to us.
The only reservation I have about that is that by holding the 1 hour thing, we're leaving out another option, which is changing the amount of equipment that we invest in to be able to do what the cluster communities would like us to do. So I would support going to the full board and for all options that the community gives, and not necessarily holding to an hour. I think it's a little early in the game on this to say it's gotta be an hour in between the schools.
One item on the production, if you're talking about for next year, talking about ordering new buses, we were just saying 3 to 4 months is what it takes to order a new bus.
Mhm.
So by August, you count back 4 months, that means you'd have to have your decision by July, June, May. You have to have your decision now.
So then my question would be, what would be the difference from running the buses that we're currently running? If we're running the same bus, and if we're running the same buses in the same cluster, how does that make us need more buses if we're running those same buses right now on these same routes? Because that's not adding up.
No, that was if you decrease that hour start time. So we need the hour start time to use the buses we have today.
Right.
If you're wanting to decrease that, the only way to do that is through efficiency or more buses. I mean, it takes.
Right, okay.
and-
So based upon your projection is, you would need the hour, right?
Yes,
Okay, and you said we could go right now if we went off the hour that you said with what we have, the equipment that we have, correct?
correct, as long as there's an hour separation, yes.
I have no objection to that. I can be in agreement with that, because at some point in time, we have to get this ball rolling. So I'm in agreement with that, take that to the full board. What they put, what they.
Somebody's gotta make a motion, and I can't.
Okay, I made what's the motion on? My bad.
Move that the Operations Committee recommend to the full board the creation of cluster-specific impact studies to engage the community around start times preferences.
With the understanding.
Was that also with the, was that now, was that with the,
Now, it doesn't have the caveat in there. that-
We need a second before we can discuss it.
only way I can second that, if we,
Second is not approval, it's just allows us to discuss it.
second,
Okay.
right. Now, moving forward, John, what I would want to be able to do is, at some point in time, my logical thinking is, in order for us to start getting this thing actually piloted, or us to start getting one of these clusters done, is for us to possibly starting somewhere.
And that's for the full board. That's part of the discussion to have with the full board.
Okay, well, you're right, okay, well, I can
What
move
we're
that
doing
forward.
is recommending
I
to do
can-
something to the full board, and the full board will have a whack at it.
I can support that, John. That's what it's gonna take.
In favor?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
We'll have a discussion with the full board. We got something, thank you. We got something out of that discussion, that's the point. We're just trying
Yep.
to get something out of these discussions.
Yep.
You got that? Okay. Comprehensive plan's gonna take about 6 months, I don't want you to forget that part.
Yes,
And you are gonna work on that.
yes, well, that's what he does every day.
So can we,
Okay. And then those efficiencies will show us other things that we can do that may be cheaper than buying buses, but it can be one of the options that has to get thrown in. And for next year, it's pretty much a flip with 1 year, with the 1 hour.
Yes.
So that's pretty much it for next year.
Yep.
Okay.
If we wanna start in August or September next year, we can look at more
Also-
complicated things.
also, can we go ahead today and come up with a date 6 months from now that this could possibly be done by?
Sure.
So that we can have something concrete within the date, 6
Today
months.
is, what's
Let us
today?
make it through the start of school, so don't do it all.
We 6 months is 6 months.
Yeah, well,
What's
6 months,
today's
6
date?
months.
May 8th? November.
it may be a little late, let's pull it back to, say, October.
Okay, you good with that?
No, I'm not. I'm not.
One,
You said,
It's less than 6 months, though.
next year is,
October when?
October of this year.
I know, but like, okay,
Well, an actual date could be, well, I guess let's say that the second Wednesday of October, whatever that is, because that's when this committee will meet. You're getting a deadline, certainly,
That's what that is.
you're writing it down, right?
Yeah.
Second Wednesday in October.
second Wednesday, October
Now,
2019.
we'll come with a report on what our capabilities of, and then like Mr. Dowling said, really at that point, we're looking for direction from y'all. We're gonna be ready to study and have everything in place for y'all to give us direction and us start giving you reports on what that means.
I agree with that, I'd like to see what the options are,
Okay?
how much better you can get in 6 months, all right? Good.
What was it? Did you find that actual date?
Oh, sure.
Alright. Looks like it's October 9th. So come back to committee ready to discuss options.
Good? Move on to the propane bus fueling stations, this is, I hope, fairly quick one, because the CIP is gonna be big.
Yep, so this is, to me, I think it's an exciting opportunity, but we want to run it by you to see what your thoughts are and see if there's any reservations. What you see here are pictures. We're looking at the potential of putting this here at the district office, over where, in the grass area where we park buses. The state has offered to pay for all the equipment. We would be required to build a concrete pad and bring power out to it. And with that, they would get us 18 new propane buses. And so I developed, I think others and I and Alexander developed the pros and cons list, if you want to hear kind of what our thoughts are.
Yes, sir, sure.
So the pros, these are easy to build, easy to use. It's paid for the state outside of electrical and pad. The price of fuel drops from $101.35 a gallon to 80 cents a gallon. And we get 18 new 77 passenger buses. Those will replace those old 1980 buses that everybody hates and wants to get rid of. These will have air conditioning, these will be nice, they're quieter, and the maintenance is lower on these buses. That's the pros. The cons. Currently, we don't have, no one in the state is using a fuel management system, so that is something we're wanting to study on how you do that with propane. We don't know. It will be, just as of right now, in the grassy area with a fence around the structure. These buses do have a limited range. They can only go about 240 miles because they hold 100 gallons. They can only be filled to 80 gallons, and they get about 3 to 4 miles per gallon. And the tank could possibly need to be filled multiple times a week or even a day, depending on the routes. So that's, and the state is asking for a grant. These are now currently in Horry, they're in Berkeley, where else? Greenville. So they already have the propane, and the state is wanting to push towards propane buses. I get excited, I think about the new 77 passenger, new buses. So that's
And for
The
this,
timeline on this,
well, they are requesting grant funding this week.
yeah, it's May 17th.
And so we told them we'd bring it, as of right now, I said, keep us in there, but we're gonna ask and see if there's any reservations about it, if we need to be pulled out.
Then they said it would take 45 days from the May 17th, once we make a firm commitment to review it and get it in motion.
So basically, this is basically a test run as well?
For us, it would be, we've never had propane buses. This would be brand new for us.
The state would just, a big savings on the maintenance for them. That's the biggest gain, the maintenance cost.
and when they're maintaining these new buses, what are they gonna do with the old buses? You know,
What are
about-
they gonna do with the old buses?
Yeah.
That's
You know,
not,
thinking about
hopefully
John's-
take them off.
Thinking about John's thing about more buses would give us more flexibility on the routes.
No, they would take them, these are
They-
1988, we have 19 still in session that have no air conditioning or anything, and
They're state properties.
they're state property, we have no jurisdiction over them.
No, okay.
They do with them, they assign buses to them, and they giveth and they taketh away, we have no control over that.
So the cons, some of them were limited range, and only 3 to 4 miles per gallon, so multiple fill-ups in one day. Tell us about the current buses that are gasoline powered. What's the range, how often the fill-ups, what's the size of the tanks, what's the
Yeah,
mileage per
I don't
gallon?
have that for you right now, I'd have to get back to you. The biggest thing that I see the advantage is, you would have air conditioning, because we have too many buses out on the road now, for us, because we don't really gain per se. And then we have to be mindful where we put these buses too, because of the limited
Yeah.
range that they have. But from an air conditioning standpoint, I mean, I was trying to think of the positives of it. The state makes out a lot better, but now we get more comfort.
We get bigger buses.
Yeah, and bigger buses, so we'll be able to pick up more students versus, we might could take a bus off the road, $80,000-$100,000 just coming right off the road just because of that.
So, and these would not be allowed to go on field trips or out of town
Yeah.
trips. They would be local, we'd watch where we use them to make sure we don't go beyond the range.
And then they're quieter,
Yeah.
it's just, what do you call it, environment friendly?
Yep.
I mean, so it's a little bit of all that. It's further along when propane first came out, when we talked to them, it's well more advanced with now, than what we had, say, maybe, what did you say, 15 years ago, 20 years ago?
I'd say the other con is we'll have a propane tank on our property. But we've looked at that, OSF has no problems with that, local jurisdictions don't have any problems with that, local fire marshal doesn't have a problem with it, so.
Yeah, and we would put one, because we talked about this too, instead of having drivers, just have a person assigned to, go around, make sure they're at 80% capacity full, so we wouldn't have to invest in all that, because you have to wear certain goggles and hand things, shields, so we would just do that, and then we would just have to maintain for the state amount of fuel that we put in each day. So, yeah, so they told us like 2 to 3 times a week at max to fill them.
That's what other districts have, but we've got some spread out routes, we may be a little worse.
So what do you need from the board?
So we're bringing for just to let you know and see if there's any reservations.
In this committee or the full board? I I'm just trying to figure
You
out.
tell, there really is no hard guideline as of right now. As of right now, they're moving forward the grant. They're considering us as someone that they're going to provide this for and spend. But if there's a reservation, we need to know that to tell them, no, we no longer are interested.
Is there any,
We would be the biggest out of all the current counties that have them. We would probably, them combined, we would have more buses than the ones that are combined right now. Because there was a lot of onesie, twosie, 3, 4, so we would, yeah, so we would have the most in the state, you know, at 18.
so Will, is there any reservation on your part? Participating in this? No.
I don't know if we have any
No.
motion.
No reservation. So you can tell them this committee has no reservations.
I mean, does anybody
Forward.
feel we need a motion or go to the board?
I think it's always been, the committees have no power really, in my mind.
Yeah.
We just recommend things to the
Yeah,
board.
yeah.
So do you wanna make a motion that says you're in support of it, or?
Something, yeah, I'm trying to help you all out.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't, I don't know what the
I
proper.
think we probably need a motion that we support this, or we have no reservations about participating in this state
Okay.
initiative.
Go ahead, John.
Move that the operations committee approve moving the topic of propane bus fueling stations to the full board for discussion.
Second.
That's not the motion I was looking for. I was looking for us to recommend something to.
Well,
Cause that's what you're,
it's
I'd come back and
it's
present again.
implied that we take a unanimous, oh, excuse me, getting ahead of myself. It's implied that we take a voting, the act of voting to bring it to the board, is that we recommend it.
Read that again. Read your motion again.
Move that the operations committee approve moving the topic of propane bus fueling stations to the full board.
It just seems to me it's so much more straightforward to say the committee recommends the board approve participating in the program.
Sure,
It
okay.
just seems like
That's fine.
more
I
straightforward,
make-
but I don't
I-
think, until you all get that
I
policy, I can't make a motion.
I make a motion that we approve, I make a motion that we approve the topic of propane filling stations to the board. Is that basically what it is?
I'm just looking that we recommend that the board approve our participation in this. I think that's real straightforward.
Move that the operations committee recommend to the full board approval of continuing work on propane bus fueling stations.
Second. All in favor? Three. That's what you need.
Excellent.
All right, now we get to the review of the CIP. And I'm gonna just I'm gonna tee this up a little bit. And then last night we, talked
Spent
about
money.
84,000, right? So, seems like we gotta find that 84 somewhere. But, all right.
All right, so the way this is built, let me just explain it to you. Yellow means you've already spent the money. And if you'll notice on the last page, on the added column, you're gonna find a yellow and with the 85, I called it 85 instead of 84.70, but, so that yellow, I've added it in. If you did the top, recommendation number 1, that was my original recommendation. Recommendation number 2 is the recommendation from last time. Recommendation number 3 is kind of where we were at the end of last meeting. So if you'll notice, recommendation number 3 comes down and you were at $20,524,000, and that's with the added $85,000. And then I have added recommendation 3B, just to confuse things. So recommendation 3B, what has changed is what you're gonna, all the changes that you see are those in, I don't know what color you wanna call this, a a light orange highlight. So I'll go down and just go through what those changes are, and you'll see kind of the big ones. So,
These are your recommendations that we've pushed out.
yep, and I'll go through 3 and 3B and kind of go over what the changes were. So item 41 is the first one. You'll see in recommendation 3 and 3B, the school technology refresh dropped from 5.8 million to 3.4. That was taking the refresh of the iPads out that was decided at the last meeting. So that's in both of them, both versions. Here's the biggest one, difference you'll find. So standardization of radios. We kept it in recommendation 3. I'm taking it out in 3B. That funding is in the referendum. 2 reasons. It's in the referendum. I personally feel a little more confident. I told you it's something we need to do. We received some additional grant money in the meantime. So as of right now, we have almost $400,000 of additional grant money. We've paid for Will Branch Early College High School work, and we still haven't touched the $800,000 from last year. So I personally am feeling comfortable that the money we have on hand will get us through what we're able to accomplish next year. So I would recommend now taking it off and waiting for the referendum to pay for the rest of it.
That's great, because that's one of the underlying questions, is if it's in the referendum, it shouldn't be in here. You're okay with that, you're okay with this.
So if we go down to the next change, is 128. Here's this one for you, Mr. Dowling. The additional student parking lot. It was asked to come out, and I took it out. I took it out in 3, I put it back in 3B. Here is why. It is not included in the current additions design package. The reason why I left it out was I had always had it in 8%. My intention was to bring it up in 8% and build it this summer. We know we're gonna need additional parking by permit, so it's no longer a want. The parking that, when we originally submitted our plan for May River High School, it was a 3-phase parking plan. We started at 1,000 students, so the parking that we have today is for 1,000 students. Phase 2 is gonna be at 1,400 students. We'll reach 1,400, I think, next year. I didn't bring my book. I get chastised. I do not have my book with me. So sometime in the next, do you have yours? I'll look that up. So we're gonna reach that number, and with the addition, we'll have capacity for that number. So that will include the town to require us to install that parking to get us to 1,400 students. And then phase 3 would get us to the 1,800. Actually, once the addition is done, that's phase 3, is the addition, is 1,800. We originally only did it for 1,000, even though right now we have capacity for 1,400 kids. And the population right now predicted for next year. So that is why I've put it in there. The other choice is to add it into the referendum amount. It just means that amount needs to increase because it currently is not included. So that if you did not want to put it here, we put it back in the we add it to the referendum.
I think that was the logic. The logic was that this should go with the May River expansion.
Exactly.
Right, well then, we can take it out in 3B, but we need to add it into the referendum. It is not in the referendum.
I'm just saying that was the logic when
Yep.
we moved it on. Is that not true?
But what I guess my logic for adding it back in is that we're at 1,350. Next year, we're supposed to be at 1,473. It would be great if we could build it this summer and get it in for those 1,400 students.
I understand that we can do this. Do students have an inherent right to drive their privately owned vehicles to school?
No.
Okay. I think students at Robert Small's Academy have an inherent right not to get rained on in the classroom. So I'm talking about priorities here. I realize we can spend $392,000 on an additional student parking lot. But in terms of priorities, I think this is dead last.
Oh,
Well, I would say that the town of Bluffton is gonna require us to do it. So to build the addition, we're gonna have to do it. It's not gonna be an option with the addition.
But
Why are they requiring us to do
Because that's, part of the permit submittal is you have to do a parking lot calculation, and you have, the one thing that the town has jurisdiction on is site development. OSF has the actual building, so we do have to, go by town ordinances as far as parking lot requirements. They have parking lot requirements, and they have parking lot requirements for schools.
Well, let me actually, have they required us to do it yet?
No, because we are in the process of submitting.
Right.
So we actually, we submitted to OSF, we're about to submit to OSF within the next month, we'll be submitting to the town, hopefully in the next month as well. So in the next month or so, we'll be submitting that.
Right, but my main question is this, if this is a no or yes question, have the town asked us for that yet?
Well, they won't ask until we submit.
It's just a no or yes
No.
question.
No.
I just feel that sometimes that Mr. Allen give me fluff answers, and I know, but I really don't want the fluff answers, because the fluff answers is what disturbs me. So I just want a yes or no answer on some of these questions, so we can move past it and get through what needs to be done. So, with that being said, I think that's something that should be put in the referendum.
Now, when the town asks for it so we can have it in our plans, I mean, okay, so we'll add it to the referendum. Well, that's a potential, if that's what y'all decide. Next item.
I think we just decided that it should be in the referendum. This committee believes it should be in
Yeah,
the
I
referendum.
think there's a lot of political sensitivity around asking for well over $250,000 for the student parking lot when we're trying to convince people to,
No kidding, it's
well,
not big.
vote for this referendum, but if
So
that's what we
we're
have to
basically
call
back
it, then
where we
we
were.
have to call it.
Okay. So the next line item, you're gonna see added, and I added this to 3B, is the roof for Southside Maintenance Building. It was previously as a push item, this is number 130, and so I still kept it out as a push item. The reason why I pushed it, that's a leaky roof right now. We wanna replace it, we have a contractor on board to replace it. The intent was to use, it's on the MC Riley campus, we had money left over from past MC Riley roofing projects. It's not enough, so, and to make it more formal, instead of using that funds, I'm coming to you saying, I'd like to specify funds for that roof, and it's a little over $100,000 for that roof. Is that too long an answer?
Okay. so
And it was not on the list before, it was on the list
I
as a
got that, I
push.
got all that part.
I'm recommending that it be added.
And this is the total cost, because you said something about there was money left over, and you know I'm gonna perk up as soon as you tell
That
me that.
was when we did the roof for MC Riley Elementary School.
Uh-huh.
This building is on the campus of MC Riley. So the question, I'm no longer looking at using that, and that's why I'm asking you for funding.
And what would you use that money for?
It would go into project contingency for FY, I don't know what year it was, I believe it may have been 2017. It was that roof was done about 3-4 years ago.
But, yeah, this is a whole nother topic, but, you know, when we have those contingency funds from those old years, at some point, we have to give back those when we don't use them. It's not really money for us to move around, so that's for another day.
Okay.
How do you feel about this item?
That's fine.
How do you feel about it? Okay.
Alright, thank you, that's a big need. And then the last thing, well, you see I added the referendum and cost estimating service. And then I do wanna bring up modular classrooms. You see that as the last item, put it as a push, but I'd feel I'd be doing injustice if I did not bring it to everybody's attention that we do not have modulars in here. If the addition is constructed on time and is part of the referendum, that will solve the River Ridge problem for next year. If our projections that we have here are correct, the problem is gonna be Pritchardville in the upcoming years, and that's why I've got, if you'll notice, I've got the mobile projection. I'll just skip, if you wanna go to, well, let me bring up two main issues. So, if you'll see here, this is our projection, this is the McKibben projection. So we're kind of going with the McKibben projection of what we do, which is pretty much staying flat. The next slide shows historical projections for 45-day and 135-day district-wide. What's to notice here is the typical pattern that you'll see the 135-day is in green, the 45-day is in blue. Usually there's a drop-off, it's pretty traditional, between the 45 and 135, that's a common pattern. And you see they parallel each other all the way throughout. Now I show you the Bluffton cluster. The reason why I'm showing you the Bluffton cluster is we have now an inversion. What that means is the 135-day is larger than the 45-day. That would be an indication to us of continuated or accelerated growth. So our indication right now would tell us that what we are seeing in the McKibben report is not to be expected next year, even though that is what we are designing for. So I want to bring, because the reason why I'm building this is when I have to come back and ask for mobiles, I can say, kind of let everybody know this would be kind of what our expectations are. So here, this is what we presented as the mobiles needed when we did the mobile plan. You'll see Pritchardville, River Ridge, May River. May River and River Ridge can be handled by the additions. So with the additions in a timely fashion, that handles the additional need. The problem is in Pritchardville. So you see, well, what I'll bring your attention to River Ridge, what this tells you, as of this year, our need at River Ridge was 16 additional classrooms. We've put in 10. Next year, it'll be an additional 4. So it'll be 20 classrooms needed. We'll only have 10 there, so we'll be 10 short. As long as we build that addition at 16, we've covered it for next year. The following year, we'll need another 3, so that'll be at 23. You can last for another 2 more years, and you'll need 28, and we'll have 10. So we'll need 18. We'll have only done 16 classrooms. So by 2022, 2023, the additions at River Ridge will be over capacity. So that's 2022. That's 3 years from now. So that's our expectations. The big one is Pritchardville. Our main concern is Pritchardville. We currently have 10 mobile classrooms at Pritchardville. There are 9 needed next year, so we're good for this year. We did add some extra there. By the following year, our guess is that we're going to need 12, so we're going to be 2 short. After that, another 4, 6 short. So and at Pritchardville, without a building addition, our answer is additional mobiles. And so as of right now, we're looking at 5 more years of needing, we have 10, well, another 16 classrooms. So we're going to need to add 2 large, in the next 5 years, we're going to need to add 2 large 8-classroom mobiles, like the size that we're going to be doing at probably May River, for more likely, on the Pritchardville campus. Where we're going to put those, I do not know. We're going to have to figure that out. So I'm just providing that to let you know we do not have mobiles in our number. We're not doing mobiles. If I have to come back to you next year, at the 45-day, at the end of this year, we'll know whether the McKibben report was correct or not. Our indications are right now that we're not heading in that direction. So we're anticipating probably having to come back and ask for additional funding for mobiles for next year.
8%.
At 8%.
Can I go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
When we need mobiles, when the referendum passes, I'm under the impression we may need mobiles for some of the projects, construction projects. Are those mobiles in the referendum money, or anticipated those will come out of 8%?
What my hope was is that particularly at Hilton Head High School, so, and possibly, Robert Smalls. I think Robert Smalls can be done without mobiles. We can build the building behind the existing building, so it can be done in such a way that the students stay in their existing building while the new building is built. Hilton Head High School and Hilton Head Middle School, both those projects will require mobiles. There's really no way around it. My hope would have been that we could have moved the River Ridge mobiles and reused them. There's not money in those projects right now for mobiles at Hilton Head High School. And if we're having to add mobiles at Pritchardville, that would come out 8%. If, let's just say River Ridge, we build the additions and we have to leave the mobiles there for extra capacity as that school grows, then that mobile will not be available to move to Hilton Head.
I just wanted to get the assumption.
That's kind of my thought process, is that it would be, I'd love to move the river, if we can move the River Ridge mobile and start the Hilton Head construction, that would be my preferred way to do it.
And that's basically the assumption that you have when you constructed the referendum.
Right, that's the assumption, there'd be no growth, so that mobile can go away after those additions are built.
Okay, just want to make that clear. Joseph? Okay. Will?
No, I'm not really.
Do we need a motion to recommend?
Well, my question is, how soon, how soon do you need this, to be known by?
Tell me about what issue, this,
No, the mobile.
well, as of right now, I'm just there's nothing,
But there's no movement.
that's just general background.
Okay.
For the most part, when I have to come back to you, you can say, you told me you were coming back. I'm not surprised that you're asking for additional money later. So
Okay.
that's my whole purpose here. I actually am not looking, if you'll notice, I have in the push column, I'm not expecting you to give any kind of funding for mobiles.
Okay.
So,
My question.
can we recommend to the board 3B as our recommendation for the 2024?
I believe Mr. Dowling and y'all agreed to subtract out the parking lot,
Yes,
which is the
we did.
392,000. So that number that you see there should change from,
19,715,649.
you already got it.
I'm assuming you're gonna make the changes we talked about.
19,715,649.
9,715,649.
That's with,
Literally all
with
sixes.
128's been pushed out of there. So it's 3C.
Yeah, well, we can make that the revised.
Modified 3B.
And you're under your 20 million.
You want a motion?
I think we should have a motion that we recommend the board approve this as the 2020 CIP.
Okay. Move that the operations committee recommend the full board approval of option 3B in the amount of $19,715,649 for the CIP.
Second. All in favor?
1975.
649.
And I'll provide for the board a revised version that only has that on. Or that'd be my suggestion, just only that with the parking lot.
Oh, yeah, we gotta do that.
Now, what I will leave, if you want me to, is the push and the referendum and the delete column. Just I'll
And
delete
then you can
all,
explain what the push means.
and I'll just
Because
delete
that's
all
a great
other
question.
options that we consider.
On that item, you wanted to do the construction that.
I did. I have
felt
things to talk
strongly
about.
about it.
Can I say thank you? I thought this went really well. Well, can we say, about this process,
Thank you.
what do you think?
I think it was a good process. It allowed everybody to say what they wanted to say, and we came to a conclusion,
So,
which is more than we usually do.
all right, construction update. I have some things to announce that I do want to make you aware of. So if you'll notice, Well Branch Early College, if you'll notice, our contracted funding compared to our approved funding, we're within $7,000. I've never been this tight on a project before, and it makes me extremely nervous, I would say that. But we are right at the end of it. We were supposed to have, well, we did have OSF inspection on Monday. We failed the inspection. So we failed the inspection because the fire alarm in the concessions building got hit by lightning over the weekend. And when she came in, the fire panel had a trouble and we couldn't get it fixed till later in the afternoon. So because of that, we did not pass our inspection. Everything else went fine. She's trying to reschedule to come back in June. The one problem is we're redoing that fire alarm this summer, so we're trying to get her in to inspect before we tear up the rest of the fire alarm. So I just want to we do not have occupancy of it yet, and that is why. As you see, we're tracking within $7,000. Scary, but still under budget. And you can see what we've paid to date, so we're on track for that. Just want to talk about summer work. Moving forward, we are complete with designs. All our projects have been submitted to OSF, so we're starting the review process now. And as I just mentioned, they're actually hoping to, they've started last weekend the fire alarm work at Well Branch. So they're doing some work in the second floor and other things. They're not impacting the fire alarm. They're gonna try to keep it together until June so that things can be inspected. But they're already pulling wire, doing stuff. So actual work has now officially started, and the rest of our projects are in design review with OSF. So did I get everything else? And we're getting ready to finalize the GMP, which is the guaranteed maximum price. That's the actual contract with the contractor.
Yeah, the fire alarm issue is a classic example of how regulations can get in the way, because we're redoing the whole thing, but we're gonna fix the old one just to get past the inspection.
Well, yeah.
So you gotta see the
And it's
irony of
Murphy's
that.
Law. I mean, poor Alexander, he was a wreck on Monday, because they had the inspection, they were going through it, and she just said, you have troubles on your fire alarm, I'm not gonna pass it. And they're like, they had to run it down, and it got hit by lightning that weekend, so.
Also proves that Murphy was an optimist.
But we'll get, luckily, there's not a pressing need for that building, so, it will be ours in June.
And that's our problem, not the contractor's problem.
What do you mean, fixing the fire alarm?
Yeah.
Yes, because that was fire alarm in the existing building,
Oh, okay.
existing concessions
Okay.
building out of the football field.
Okay.
So it is what got hit by lightning and caused a trouble in the building panel.
Put on your future topics.
Oh. I've got some.
You have, you always have. You have future topics.
I have one from Earl. I think, Christina, I'm just reminding Christina, it was asked, Earl's topic,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
what was
It
supposed to
was-
be at the work session, you wanted it to go
Come
to the
here.
operations, and
It
it
was
was about,
twofold.
it was, well, one goes to, academics, but
Okay.
the other one was about the track field. Herbert Glaze wanted to come and talk to the board about the facilities of our fields at the high schools and how they are not up to standard those are my words at this point, but it was regarding the track fields. And he wanted to come and talk about it.
Didn't Dr. Bird cover that in his presentation at the work session, the condition of the athletic fields?
Yeah, and that has a setup for the referendum now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The athletics are in the referendum.
right. So,
He said, from the board, you want him to come to the committee.
yeah.
Yeah, but
So
you
that's
know
a
what,
future topic.
yeah, and maybe it's not really necessary now because of
Well-
the committee review
Well, I
of
won't-
the,
I
of
won't-
the fields.
Right, but
Because
I
it's just
won't-
one individual's review versus a committee review.
Well, we have in respective, we have bounced it up from one committee, tell me from the actual agenda setting to an actual board member is asking for that to come to the board. So I'm gonna ask for that for that topic to come forward, and then that's what he wants to do. Then I don't see a problem with that. I don't see a problem with this. If he wants to come talk to us about that issue, then I don't see a problem with us hearing that.
I would say it may
I don't see a
even be,
problem with it either, but I wanna put a time limit on it.
Right, yeah.
it may be a separate item
I've
he's
spoken to
bringing.
Mr. Glaze enough to know we gotta put a time limit on it.
That's fine, I mean, that's fine.
So it may be a separate item from the referendum, because what you're talking about is rebuilding. He may be talking about our replacement time, tracks we replace every 10 years.
Yeah,
He, Well Branch, and some others around year 8 have started to show issues where we start patching it, because I'm telling them we're replacing it year 10, we've gotta get it there, and he's not happy with that. So it may be more along the lines of a replacement time, not just which is our standard recurring replacement.
Right, well, I said, what I don't wanna speculate on, I just wanna.
Well, listen.
Exactly,
He had
yeah.
a time, didn't,
Yeah.
Earl gave a time, I wanna say it was 10 minutes or 20 minutes.
Yeah, he told me he only had 10 minutes.
Yeah,
Right,
it wasn't
right,
very
that's
long,
good.
10
Yeah,
minutes.
exactly.
We're
So,
content,
yeah.
tell him 5.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
you have future topics also?
Yes, so, one would be the Islands of Beaufort request to purchase, the property again, they've made a second offer.
Right.
Now, does that come to this committee?
I assume, because we talked,
Yeah, we're talking about it.
All right, the other is, this came from Wendy Cartledge via, I think, maybe Miss Orshak and possibly a few others, wanted us to look at the facility use policy in regards to campaign use of facilities. So Wendy asked, she thought it was best if it was brought up for this committee, since it would be over facilities use. So because of her request, I am making that request.
Yeah, I believe that's political and religious service use.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I know the background. I just wanna make sure that we know exactly
Exactly,
what
because,
output they're expecting.
right, because I'm about ready to deny that request, but I mean, that's up to y'all. I don't really see a real legitimate, I mean, if that's something that's been handled before, why are we, why is it coming before us again, exactly?
It was a request of some board members. At staff level, we see no reason to bring it up.
Right,
No board member requested it from you, right? Requested to Wendy.
Correct, and
Okay.
Wendy wanted it to come to
Let
this.
me check with Wendy, because
Okay.
I hate when it goes around
Yep.
like that.
I am
Rather
2
the person
layers
just
removed,
come
I
to
will
us
say.
and ask us to do it,
right.
Okay,
like Earl did. So I'll follow with Wendy on that.
all right, I have another. And, last night, we had the maintenance contract extension to do an executive session. Does that want to come here now, since you didn't get to it? Let me talk about, there's a couple time-sensitive issues with it. The contract expires in June, end of June. So in order to have the time to bid it and whatnot, we're obviously delayed. I am getting the picture that, maybe we need to step back, but recognize we're probably going to need to extend the contract one way or another, whether it's 2 months in order to build it, or whether it's a year in order to put it back. I'm just saying, the delay is causing us, we're gonna have to extend it anyway to get time now to bid it, just most likely. But if it wants to come to this committee, that's just gonna delay it. We just have to have a decision by, say, June. I'd say about, get a decision by early June. The earliest in June, the better.
Is it important enough for this committee to have a special meeting?
Exactly, that's what we should.
Well, that kind of was one of your things. I would, if you want to weigh in on it, I would say yes, because
All right,
as soon-
we'll have a special meeting on that.
Yeah,
We'll
we
arrange
can't
it, we'll
discuss it
see,
today.
yeah, no.
we'll see
Yeah,
what your schedules allow, and
that was
we'll,
special.
special meeting.
And it is, so,
Special committee or special board?
Committee.
Special
Special
committee
committee.
meeting, just to focus on that issue.
now,
Get
under
it out of
the,
the way.
under the new board policy, well, the board has to, it's not, I do believe the board has to approve this contract under the new policy because it is the high enough a range. Well, they did approve it last night, didn't
Right.
Yeah, the doc, yeah.
Okay, we can,
they? If you didn't approve
Yeah,
it,
No, that was the meeting before,
so
because it's about the,
she just gave,
contract amount.
she just gave a list last night.
no, so we approved last night, that any contracts or purchases of $100,000 or more have to be presented to the board just by a list, not
Okay.
approved by the board. But the prior meeting, we said the board has to approve any purchase or contracts worth was 0.1%
This would
of the total
fall-
budget, and this would fall under that.
And because of that, the reason why we put it in executive session, because we had all the contract information and everything provided, and it's really a contract discussion at that point. So I don't,
So it doesn't need to come to this committee.
well, this committee could go in executive session, I
This
believe.
committee can go into executive session.
Then we'd have to go to the full board and they'd have to approve it anyhow.
The
I
full
think
board
it's-
is gonna have to.
I think it's faster to just go to the board and get it done.
That's fine.
And we're meeting again
It's-
on a day, whatever it is.
You're meeting on, you're meeting on the
Actually, we meet on
13th, you're meeting on
Monday.
the 16th, and you're meeting
21.
again on the 21st.
The 21st.
Can I get in one of those?
21st.
Can this get on one of those? I don't know which one it
21st.
it falls into.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think you should just go to the board, that's the shortcut, just
Feel-
go to the board,
Yeah, because we do have
in
to. approve it
executive
as a
session,
whole.
discuss the contract.
Okay.
So it goes back to the board.
Okay.
So take this off the future topic
Are you-
list and it
are you
goes
more-
back to the board.
You did talk about whether you're gonna have more than one meeting per month.
Well, that was, if needed, then we
Right.
just kind of.
Right.
So you'll get the date.
I'm amenable to having more than one if we need to.
Right.
So,
It is, I would say it does get difficult in some of these to wait a month.
tonight, we don't need to have another one, we can wait
Right.
one.
I would say future topics, I believe we have some HR questions that we need to ask as well. I believe we need to get HR in as well.
All right, we'll say that, and then you're gonna.
What is
you'll
your
send us the
specific
questions.
question? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send
Send the
the,
questions.
yeah, I'll send the questions. I'll send the questions.
We gotta have specific questions so we can focus on them.
That's no problem. I mean, we're just talking about, we're talking about future agenda questions, and I'm
That's
just saying.
exactly it, just send the questions. All right, so.
Well, hold on, Dave, wait a minute. You're saying send the questions, right? But I wanna make it plain that when you said, if we're talking about future topics,
Right.
and we're talking about future topics, that I wanna say, make it open, you said that we would have to go to him as a liaison person.
Right.
Right, okay, so I just wanted to be known before we leave here today, that I will be sending topics about HR.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed that, right?
Yeah, we got
If
plenty
you're
of
not comfortable, then we bring Allison, you'll bring Allison, okay?
HR.
So tonight, we're gonna go by cluster, we're gonna offer that to the board, we got that out of the way. Comprehensive plan's gonna take 6 months. We're gonna get the community input. CIP, we approved it, we're good, present that to the board. I'm gonna check with Wendy on the facilities use issue.
The propane fueling, you're taking that to be, you're recommending to the full board that you can go ahead and continue.
Yes. Anything else I missed?
No, so you'll obviously have a committee report for May 21.
Yeah, I'm just,
Yeah.
and that's what I do, like, just
Yeah.
recap, so before we leave this room, we all agree. So I don't wanna give a report and then have one of y'all say, wait a second,
Yeah.
I want us to agree before we leave the room.
Do you wanna list your future topics as well? Or is that?
And that-
Future.
That would be good.
Islands of Beaufort, track field, Mr. Glaze, and HR questions.
All right, we'll put that in the minutes.
Maintenance contract goes back to May 21st board meeting.
Oh, and, yeah,
Executive
and we
session.
did get a due date on the
October 8th.
comprehensive plan,
Plan.
right, that's another thing. Okay, everybody agree that's what we got done? All right, move to adjourn, we're out of here. Thank you all.
Do you want to send me, Ms. Strivenger, kind of, or we wanna make sure we've got everything together
Yes, we're
before the
gonna
May
ask you
21st
Next
board meeting?
meeting, yeah.
You wanna send to me, or you want me to send to you?
Sign everything
You know what's up,
that's
I don't
in-
need to-
All right, I'll send to you.
Thank you, send me.
So,
Thank you.
then
See ya.
I'll go through to make sure that they're all
Yeah,
there.
I'll-
And this is the way to do.
That's the one.
I remember it.
Race.
This is the way to do it.
It's much better to have the work session.
You were
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.